people, and it's interesting when you go down there and you visit and you see people are painting houses, and people are still completing construction of houses, and the yeshiva is learning, and people are planting and all this sort of stuff. But the most powerful memory I have was being invited to meet Yuli Edelstein. Yuli Edelstein is a refusnik who made Aliyah, who's Dati, who's Orthodox, who lives in Alon Shvut, and who's a member of the Likud party, but is opposed to disengagement. And he has moved down to Gadid, which is one of the 17 villages in the area, to show his solidarity with the people down there. And he gave me the arguments of why he was concerned, why he's opposed to disengagement. If not in toto, then certainly at this point in time. And today, there's going to be a resolution coming up in Knesset to defer the disengagement. Let me talk a little bit more about that, because there are different approaches, okay? So there's an article here from Danny Rubenstein. Danny Rubenstein is a leftist journalist who writes for the Haaretz. And in it he writes, on a second thought. By the way, those of you who read the Jewish News will have read something that Chemi Shalev wrote, the Israeli journalist who's spending a few years here, 3 years, while his wife was on Shlichut, and who's the second editor or the deputy editor, where he writes that those people who were vilified for attacking Oslo at the time were not treated correctly, and now people should realise that if people have a different view, they should be listened to and not ignored, because we now know Oslo started with Efes and finished with Efes, okay? It was a zero. It didn't do anything except contribute to the Intifada and the loss of Jewish life and Palestinian life, because there's a response appropriately. Danny Rubenstein, who's a leftist journalist, said the time has come for those who favour the unilateral disengagement from Gaza to think again, because it may be that the entire issue is not worthwhile, not for ideological reasons as forbidden to uproot settlements or to give up parts of the homeland. That doesn't bother him. The argument for second thought stems from the events of recent days, which raise fears that a unilateral withdrawal from Gaza is causing serious security damage to Israel. And he goes through the arguments, which is essentially the same as Yuli Edelstein, which is that this withdrawal is giving the biggest encouragement to those people of the terrorists, because they believe and certainly claim that they have pushed Israel out in the same way as the Hezbollah did in Lebanon, claimed to do, and gave the encouragement for the commencement of the Second Intifada. So they are getting idud, an encouragement to actually further their activities, and that's why they say we want more pieces. Now if it all goes ahead as it's meant to, a couple of days after Tisha B'Av, then they have already said, but we don't want just those 3 settlements which are at the absolute north, but we want to go right up to Ashkelon. Straight away, there's no shyness, no embarrassment whatsoever. So that's one article, and he goes through in greater detail why he thinks it's not a good idea. And it's interesting when a leftist journalist who's always been supported things like that, and probably has views that, and I don't want to misrepresent it, but I think I've read that he was not in favour of retaining Yehuda v'Shomron, says that you have to pay attention. On the other hand, Yoram Schweitzer, who I've also met from the Jaffe Centre for Strategic Studies, who's an expert on counter-terrorism, says, is a third intifada inevitable because it's claimed that there will be one as a result of this? He says, not so. He thinks there are many forces that will lead to a situation where there won't be violence. So, you know, you're in the hands of, and you can read, and you have to make your own decisions about the way things go. I'd rather be sure. England is obviously in trouble, and there is a plethora of articles that talk about it, but the biggest shock to everybody was that these were not foreign agents brought in, but they were cricket-loving, English-educated boys who seemingly, unless it comes out, come from families that did not know that this was going on. And they sent their children, 2 of whom had been to Pakistan several times, where the motherland was, seemingly not aware that there was anything innocuous, other than innocuous, going on with the children, that there was anything insidious happening, and they were trained to murder. There was a very interesting report that came out about a 14-year-old Islamic boy in the UK whose father had died, and in this period of mourning he decided that he would start going to the mosque and involving himself with the religious faith in the way that his father conducted himself, and went to services 5 times a day and tried to really absorb himself with the Islamic religion. He was observed and identified as a serious boy, and 2 men approached him. He'd never seen them before, both bearded men that he recognised as, of course, Islamic, but he never knew them, didn't know their names, didn't know where they came from, and they asked if they could spend some time with him and talked about the passing of his father and the tragedy, and showed him videos, videos that had obviously been concocted, of how Palestinians are being murdered in Israel, and this is what's being done to Islam. And they understood that he's missing his father, and he could see his father again. He could become a shahid, and the reference to the virgins and this, that and all the other, and he would see his father again, which for a moment resonated with the boy because he missed his father dearly, and then he remembered that his father was against violence, and he left. He left. He never saw the 2 men again. Nobody approached him again, and until this event took place, he didn't report it, and now he reported it. There's a very serious attempt to inculcate people with values that are opposed to Western democracy and tremendous Jew hatred, and we live in that world, and Susie was referring to that. Our best response to that is not the politics of denial of the Neville Chamberlain days. Our best response to that is education. I've said it again. What Chabad is doing in terms of educating its children, what we are doing in terms of Zionist youth movements, what we are doing in our Jewish day school movement, what we're doing to work with the wider community and give them the alternatives, let them know what the other side is, to ensure that if we identify something like these bookstores in Brunswick which are selling these terrible books, that an attempt is made to prevent that, and somehow to educate our politicians that they have to take this issue very, very seriously. There are so many articles I could have read to you that support a lot that I've said. There's something here, and I just want to refer to that. Zalman, this is yours. Okay. I believe that you've got the best intentions, but you have to be very careful what you put in here. Okay? You need guidance. You need someone to proofread what you write here, because you mean well. You write here on the front page, the grave enemy of the Jews is disunity, which has caused many catastrophes. I believe in that. We have to be Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lazeh. We have to support each other and look after each other. And if even better, Kol Yisrael Chaverim. We have to be friends with each other. But you go on to say that disunity caused the destruction of the first and second temples. It didn't cause the destruction of the first temple. This is a mistake. There's a Midrash Rabbah that says Yerushalayim is made up of 2 names, the Yeru and the Shalem. Yirah and Shalom. The first Bayit was destroyed because there wasn't Yirat Shamayim. There wasn't proper faith in God. The second Bayit, the second temple, was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, because of baseless hatred. That's disunity. And the Midrash Rabbah goes on to say that there isn't a third term because the Bayit Shlishi will be La'olam Va'ed, that the third temple, when it's built, when the Mashiach comes, and I believe in that. But you go on a little further, and you have to be so cautious. Please, you have to be so cautious. You say it led to exile, correct, and it led to the Holocaust. We weren't murdered because we had disunity. We were murdered